Welcome in. Week 4, Red Stinker Tinker. Let's switch this up a little. All right. We're a little early on this Sunday morning, but we got things to do on Sunday. We got a lot of football to watch today, so let's buckle up. I got our coffee. Shout out, go Shocks! Shockers up. Let's get into the Stinker Tinker here. Start out with our top quarterback. We're going to Deshaun Watson. Last time Minnesota faced a top-tier quarterback, they gave up 30.5 fantasy points. That was week 1 to Aaron Rodgers. He tore up this defense. Houston has started with a pretty tough schedule, and finally with a beatable defense. Look for Deshaun Watson to show up at the top of the quarterback list this week. Top running back this week, we're going Alvin Kamara. Easy choice here. He's the number 1 running back through 3 weeks. I talked about him on the podcast this week as he would be the number 1 draft pick if we were to redraft right now for the rest of the season. Jared Cook and Michael Thomas are out for this week. Look for another huge game from Alvin Kamara. I don't think he's going to get the 13 catches that he got last week, but he really only needs a few catches to make the huge plays that he's capable of. Give me Alvin Kamara as many times as possible this week. A top wide receiver, going back to the well a little bit here with Tyler Lockett, last week's number 1 wide receiver, and another great matchup against a Miami defense this week. Chris Carson is playing today, but he does have that injury. I think he's going to be a little bit limited today, even though he is playing. I could see Miami keeping up early in this game, which will keep Russ throwing the ball, and Tyler Lockett has more volume than DK Metcalf right now. Therefore, I'm taking Tyler Lockett this week. At top tight end, I'm throwing a little bit of a dart here, but you know that I love Mike Gesicki. In a game in which Miami will be trailing in a great matchup against a bad Seattle defense, look for Mike Gesicki to be the best tight end of the week this week. All right, let's talk about some different games here. The give me all of that game, Monday Night Football, Green Bay versus Atlanta. Finally, we get away from the Cowboys with being a give me all that game. Tomorrow night, though, I want as much of this game as possible. I know the tough part is all the injuries, both teams' pass catchers, both Atlanta with Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley are questionable. Russell Gage does look like he is going to play this week. But then you also have the questionable tag still on Devontae Adams. I don't care who ends up playing. I want to get as much of that as possible. It's going to be a shootout tomorrow night. Packers versus Falcons. And then the don't like that game, we're sticking with our 49ers. I think that they've hit this game just about every single week so far. Over-under is 45.5 tonight. I just don't like anybody on these teams outside of the running backs and tight ends. There's not a lot of other fantasy options. So for Philly, you can start Miles Sanders and Zach Ertz. And for San Francisco, you can start Jerick McKinnon and George Kittle. And that's about it. You're not going to like any of the pass catchers. You're not going to like any of the wide receivers, I should say. And you're not going to like the quarterbacks tonight. 49ers versus Eagles, don't like that. Let's go into our You Snooze, You Lose player of the week. I'm going with Joe Burrow. He's rostered in 72% of leagues, but he's only being started in about 35% of leagues. You're going to want that percentage to go way up this week. Against the Jacksonville defense, who was 28th in the league against quarterbacks, Burrow is currently the 10th best quarterback in fantasy through 3 weeks. Why are we still sleeping on Joe Burrow? He should be in our lineups. He's only rostered in 72% of leagues. Go check out. He may not be rostered in your league, and I think that he needs to be rostered in your league. That should be way up to 100% there, and we should be starting him across all platforms right now. The Cincinnati Bengals are bad on defense. Joe Burrow is going to continue to throw. He's throwing the ball 47 times per game. There's a lot of volume there. Why are we still sleeping on Joe Burrow? Here's some quarterbacks that that you might still be starting, and I would start Joe Burrow over this week. Jared Goff against the Giants. he's going to have a good game, but there's no reason for him to continue to throw. I don't think they're going to get up early and run the ball. Drew Brees without Michael Thomas and Jared Cook. Tom Brady, I don't know why. You're not going to like him start. And then also against Joe Burrow's opponent in Gardner Minshew, who was a big-time streamer last week. He kind of become a dud last week. I think Joe Burrow outperforms him today as well. You'll hear more about my predictions on Joe Burrow and the Bengals offense here in a minute. But first, hit it and quit it. Justin Watson, wide receiver for Tampa Bay. Chris Godwin's out. Scotty Miller's a game time today. He's got a hip situation going on. Look for Justin Watson to get some run opposite of Mike Evans today. I like him, especially if you're playing in a daily format, maybe throwing a dart, you're trying to be different. Get some Justin Watson into your lineups this week. I do think that he has a solid game here. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. Oh, good. All the New England test results came back negative today. That's what I was looking. Just got the alert. Okay, coulda, woulda, shoulda. Here's a guy that's been on our radar, and I'm not really sure why he can still fit into the category of coulda, woulda, shoulda. Remember, this is a category that these are players who are owned in 50% of leagues that you, at the end of this week, you're going to wish that he was already on your team. Go get him now. Go get him this morning. And that's Dalton Schultz, owned in just 32% of leagues. Last week, he has a low game. He gets 8.8 fantasy points, which is more than a lot of the top tight ends. I distinctly remember last Thursday night, Mike Gesicki got 8.5 fantasy points. Dalton Schultz is the guy there. Here's the next four opponents: Cleveland, New York Giants, Arizona Cardinals, and the Washington football team. You love all those matchups. Get the guy on your bench now. You might have to start him in certain situations. You've got bye weeks coming up, so you're going to have your tight end on a bye. This is a backup tight end that you could put in your flex if you need be. If you lost Derrick Henry this week, or if you're worried about the Chiefs and Patriots game, you could put a guy like Dalton Schultz in your flex and be very happy with the volume that he's going to get. Dalton Schultz, coulda, woulda, shoulda. This week's fallback boys, Tom Brady. I know I talked about Justin Watson being a guy that you could kind of throw a flyer on this week, but Tom Brady against the Chargers without his top wide receiver, you may have been wanting to start him in a 2-quarterback league. You might have had to start him in your 12-team standard league still, depending on your other options if you were starting Big Ben every week, or maybe a Ryan Tannehill as your other options. But expect lower than a top 15 game this week from Tom. I would try to find somebody else, maybe that Joe Burrow, maybe Ryan Fitzpatrick. Try to find somebody else other than Tom Brady this week. All right, my bold prediction of the week: the Bengals are going to blow out the Jacksonville Jaguars, and maybe that's not bold. However, I think the entire offense has a coming out party today. They've been pretty good over the first couple of weeks, and today is the day they just explode. Joe Mixon, yes, the dreaded Joe Mixon that you drafted in the first round, and he has done nothing for you this year. He's going to get in the end zone. Tyler Boyd's going to stay hot this week. And I already talked about my love for Joe Burrow this week. I think T. Higgins continues to build on what he had last week. All of this happening while A.J. Green doesn't produce. I think that we're going to start to see this continuation of this young offense building together moving forward, while A.J. Green kind of takes the back seat and is left behind. Maybe he's left for dead, I guess, if you would say. But, yeah, I think that my bold prediction is that Cincinnati Bengals offense explodes while A.J. Green does not give you a fantasy output that you would really like to see out of him. As I wrap up here, hear me out. COVID is a situation that's happening, obviously, across football right now, and everybody knows about it. If you're a fantasy football commissioner, you need to have something in place to help out your fantasy managers. Fantasy football is a game for fun. We enjoy the game. We want to continue to enjoy the game. And if you put stress on people to have to either make a decision to start a Chief for now what could be tomorrow night's game, or take the Chiefs out because you don't know if they're going to play, that doesn't make fantasy football fun. figure out a way to ensure that all the managers have a fair opportunity to continue to play their teams, play the guys that they drafted, play the guys that they have gotten fair and square, and enjoy the game while also not having to stress out too much over just starting other players. Here's what we did in all of my leagues. I took it straight from Twitter, from a guy that I follow on Twitter. We're telling our guys, or telling our managers, go ahead and put your Chiefs and your Patriots players in, as long as they're not an injured player. If you want to start them, go ahead and start them. But we're making them go ahead and choose a backup player. So if the game gets canceled after 12 p.m. today, if I have Travis Kelce, I say I have Travis Kelce. I'm going to have Dalton Schultz as my backup. Travis Kelce is in my lineup still. But even if Dalton Schultz's game has already started and he's locked, I can't put him in my lineup. We all know, we're all on the same page. That was my backup guy. That was who I was going to play. All your rosters have to still stay the same. You can't put a wide receiver for a quarterback if you don't have a flex quarterback spot or vice versa. So make sure, if you're a fantasy football commissioner, or if you're a fantasy football player and your commissioner hasn't done anything, figure it out today. Figure it out this morning, because you need to have something put in place before 12 p.m. today. Also, as you work through this COVID situation, obviously we hope everybody's staying safe. Make sure you just continue to follow it. The Titans and the Steelers are going to be a bye week. The Chiefs and Patriots are currently still on for this week, so it's a lot up in the air. This situation that I talked about would only go for the Chiefs Patriots, as they've already said the Titans Steelers are a bye. So just have something in place. Go ahead and get some rules in there. Make sure that everybody's on the same page before 12 p.m. today. And as always, don't over tinker.